Luna stares at the ceiling, counting sheep for the 100th time that night. The digital clock mocks her. 3:47 a.m. Another sleepless night in what feels like an infinite cycle of insomnia that's haunted her for months. The darkness of her room feels heavy, oppressive, like a wet blanket she can't shake off. She tosses and turns, trying to find a position that will magically lull her to sleep, but her mind keeps racing, processing random thoughts and worries that seem amplified by the night's quietude. She grabs her phone, the blue light burning her darkness-adapted eyes. She scrolls through social media aimlessly, passing photos of friends presumably sleeping peacefully, at least she assumes they're sleeping, since they're not posting at 4 a.m., productivity articles that make her feel even worse about being awake, and sleep product ads that seem to mock her situation. That's when, by algorithmic chance or fate, she discovers a link to something called Sleepless Souls, a community for insomniacs. The name resonates somewhere deep within her chest, as if someone had struck a chord she didn't know she possessed. She clicks the link and finds herself on a simple but welcoming online forum, with posts from people around the world sharing their nocturnal experiences. She reads for an hour before feeling brave enough to create an account. Her fingers hesitate over the username field. Part of her wants to use something completely anonymous, but another part yearns for authenticity, for real connection. Finally, she types Luna Insomniac. Simple, honest, real. Her first post is more vulnerable than she planned. Does anyone else feel like the whole world is sleeping while you're trapped in this strange liminal space between day and night? Like you're living in a parallel universe where silence has weight and darkness has texture? Sometimes I feel like I'm the only conscious person in a world of dreamers, and it's simultaneously lonely and strangely powerful. She hesitates before clicking post, questioning whether she's sharing too much, whether she'll sound desperate or dramatic. But at 4:12 a.m., vulnerability feels easier than during the day, when social masks are firmly in place. Responses trickle in throughout the night, each notification making her heart skip a little. There are people from all over the world, a programmer in Tokyo working night shifts, a nurse in Scotland who can't turn off her mind after intense shifts, an artist in Australia who finds her creativity in the small hours of dawn. But one response in particular catches her attention in a way that makes her stop scrolling entirely. The username is MidnightWanderer, and his response is poetic in a way that doesn't feel forced or pretentious. You've perfectly described what I call 3 a.m. consciousness. It's like being the only person awake in a city of dreamers, having conversations with shadows and befriending the silence that others fear. There's a clarity in these hours that the daytime world doesn't offer, as if the prentices and distractions of day are stripped away, leaving only our truest essence. Luna smiles for the first time in weeks, a real smile, not one of the polite smiles she wears during the day like a piece of clothing. She clicks on his profile, finding a sparse but intriguing history. He doesn't post frequently, but when he does, his posts reveal a depth that captivates her. He writes about insomnia not as a curse to be cured, but as a different way of experiencing time and consciousness. Insomnia has taught me that not every awakening is an interruption, he'd written in an earlier post. Sometimes it's a revelation. While the world sleeps, we find versions of ourselves we rarely see in daylight. Luna finds herself reading through his old posts, each one revealing more layers of a mind that seems to operate on the same frequency as hers. He talks about art created in the depths of night, about books that only make sense when read at 3 a.m., about the strange intimacy of being one of the few conscious people in your time zone. Their first private conversation happens at 4:23 a.m. after Luna spends 20 minutes crafting and rewriting a simple message. Finally, she sends, "Your post about 3 a.m. consciousness really resonated with me. I've never found anyone who understood that there's something almost sacred about these insomniac moments. Most people just tell me to try melatonin or meditation." MidnightWanderer responds within minutes, almost as if he'd been waiting for her message. Most people see insomnia as broken sleep, something that needs to be fixed. I see it as expanded consciousness. There's something profound about being present when the world rests, about having access to thoughts and feelings that the noise of day usually drowns out. Don't you think? And then they're talking, really talking, in a way Luna rarely experiences even with close friends. Hours pass without either of them noticing. They discuss books that accompany them through long nights. He loves Borges and Murakami. She prefers poetry and memoirs. They talk about how city lights look different at dawn, how there's an almost magical quality to the golden hour before the world fully awakens. "Have you ever noticed," he types around 5:30 a.m., "how 5 a.m. feels completely different from 11 p.m., even though they're technically just a few hours apart? It's like we cross into a different universe somewhere around 3 a.m. "Yes," Luna responds, excited that he understands something she struggled to articulate. 11 p.m. still feels like part of the previous day, but 5 a.m. feels like pure possibility, like you could become anyone, make any decision. Exactly. That's why some of the best art and literature was created in the depths of night. There's less resistance to accessing our deepest truth. Luna discovers that behind the poetic username is someone who not only thinks like her, but feels like her, understands the peculiar loneliness of chronic sleeplessness. But more than that, he values that loneliness, sees it as a gift rather than a curse. "Can I ask you something personal?" Luna types after their third night of conversation, when they've established a rhythm of meeting online every night after midnight. "Ask away, Luna. Something about these nocturnal conversations makes honesty easier, doesn't it? Like the normal rules of politeness and privacy are suspended." Do you ever feel like you're living two lives? The daytime version of yourself, who functions in the normal world, goes to work, maintains superficial relationships, and this nighttime version, who is more authentic? His response comes quickly, as if he'd been waiting for someone to ask this exact question. "Every day. The person I am at 3 a.m. feels more real than the one I am at 3 p.m. It's like insomnia strips away all the disguises we carry during the day. Social expectations, the need to appear successful and well-adjusted. At night, I can just be." That's exactly how I feel. My friends think insomnia is this terrible problem I need to solve, but honestly, some of the best parts of me only emerge during these hours. It's when I write, when I take my best photos, when I have my clearest thoughts. "What do you write?" he asks, and Luna feels a small frisson of vulnerability. She rarely shares her writing with anyone. "Mostly poetry, things that only make sense in the depths of insomnia. What about you? What kind of art do you create?" "I work in mixed media, mostly pieces exploring the experience of time and consciousness. It's hard to explain without showing, but they're visual expressions of what we call 3 a.m. consciousness." Their conversations quickly evolve from forum posts to private messages, and then, when MidnightWanderer suggests more privacy, to an encrypted messaging app. "I know it might seem paranoid," he writes, "but I value our connection too much to risk losing it to forum algorithms. Besides, I feel like we're building something that deserves its own sacred space." Luna downloads the app immediately, her heart racing with the implication that this connection is special enough to warrant extra protective measures. Their conversations become daily rituals she anticipates, extending for hours through the depths of night. She discovers that he's a professional artist, though he's vague about the specific details of his career. "I prefer to keep some mystery," he writes when she asks for more. "Not because I'm hiding something bad, but because there's something beautiful about knowing each other as souls first, then as people." He creates things during his sleepless nights. Expressions of 3 a.m. consciousness, he calls them, occasionally sending partially obscured photos of paintings and sculptures that capture an ethereal, haunting quality that resonates deeply with Luna. In exchange, she shares her own creative outlets: poems she writes in the depths of insomnia, photographs of empty streets at dawn, small insights about life that only emerge when the world is quiet. He responds to each piece with an understanding that makes her feel seen in a way she rarely experiences. "I have a confession," Luna types one night, after 2 months of conversations that have become the most important part of her days. "I'm actually looking forward to my insomnia now. It's the only time I get to really talk to you. I've started resisting sleep because I don't want to miss our time together." "I was thinking the same thing," he responds almost immediately. "Sleep used to be my enemy, something I desperately chased every night. Now it feels like it would be a betrayal of these moments we share, of this connection we've built." The word connection hangs between them, loaded with unspoken possibilities and unnamed emotions. Luna finds herself obsessively questioning the man behind the midnight messages. Through their conversations, she's built a mental image of him: thoughtful, creative, deeply introspective, someone who sees beauty in places others consider empty or haunted. She knows he has a laugh that translates even through text. She can seal his joy in his words when something amuses him, can tell when he's smiling, even through a screen. She knows he drinks coffee late at night, even though he knows it will worsen his insomnia, that he has a tendency to quote obscure literature during casual conversations, that he sees meaning in coincidences others would dismiss. But she doesn't know what he looks like, where exactly he lives, beyond somewhere not too close, not too far, what his real name is, how his voice sounds when not filtered through text. "I know this sounds crazy," she types one particularly vulnerable night after spending an hour staring at the message before having the courage to send it, "but talking to you has become the most real relationship in my life. Is that strange? Pathetic?" "Not at all," he responds with a speed that suggests he was thinking the same thing. "I feel the same way. There's something pure about knowing someone's mind before their face, their thoughts before their circumstances. We've built something genuine here, Luna, something rare." "Sometimes I wonder if you're real," she admits. "Like you might be a product of my own insomniac imagination, an idealized version of connection I created because I was feeling so isolated." "I'm real," he writes, "and so are you, and what we have is real, even though it exists in this liminal space between sleep and waking, maybe especially because it exists here." 3 months after their first conversation, Luna realizes their interactions have evolved into something resembling dating, though neither has explicitly labeled it as such. They have inside jokes and shared references. They worry about each other when one is absent for more than a night. They share intimate details about their lives, their fears, their hopes. They send each other photos of their sleepless discoveries: Luna's dawn photographs captured during 5 a.m. walks, MidnightWanderer's artistic creations, always partially obscured to maintain some mystery, but revealing enough to show real talent and an aesthetic sensibility that matches hers. They talk about meeting someday, but it always seems like a distant possibility, something that belongs to their functional daytime selves, not their authentic midnight identities. There's something almost sacred about keeping their connection in the realm of 3 a.m. consciousness, as if bringing it into daylight might diminish its magic. "What would you say if I told you I think I'm falling in love with someone I've never met?" Luna asks her best friend Sarah during one of their weekly coffee dates, trying to sound casual, but failing completely. Sarah nearly chokes on her latte. I'd say that's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the beginning of a catfish episode. She responds with a smile that mixes amusement with genuine concern. But knowing you and your tendency to intellectualize emotions, it's probably both at the same time. He's not a catfish, Luna says quickly. I mean, I don't think he is. We share so much, and everything feels genuine. It's just complicated. Honey, any relationship that exists only between midnight and dawn is complicated by definition. Have you considered meeting him in person? We talk about it sometimes, but Luna hesitates, trying to articulate feelings she doesn't fully understand herself. There's something about keeping it in the depths of night that feels important, like bringing it into the real world might change everything. Or it could make everything even better, Sarah suggests gently. Sometimes the most beautiful things become even more beautiful when we bring them into the light. Luna can't argue with that observation, but she also can't shake the fear that the mystery and magic of their nocturnal connection won't survive the scrutiny of daylight reality. She's falling in love with a voice that understands her, with a mind that dances with hers, with a presence that transforms her insomnia from a curse into a gift. But she's also terrified. What happens when 3 a.m. consciousness meets the unforgiving fluorescence of daylight? What happens if the real person can't live up to the connection they've built in the shadows? As Luna lies awake another night, typing and deleting messages to MidnightWanderer, she realizes she's reached a decision point. She can keep this relationship forever in the depths of night, safe but limited. Or she can risk it by bringing it into reality. The question is whether she's brave enough to find out if the magic can survive the dawn. The decision, when it finally comes, arrives at 2:34 a.m. on a Tuesday, after Luna has spent a full hour typing and deleting the same message. Her apartment is silent, except for the low hum of the air conditioner and the distant ticking of the kitchen clock. She's curled up in her bed, laptop open, staring at a conversation that has become as central to her life as breathing. I think it's time, she finally types, her heart racing from a decision that's been building for weeks like a distant storm. I mean, if you want to, maybe we could meet in person? She hits send before she can change her mind, then stares at the screen as if she could force a response to appear through sheer willpower. The scene indicator appears immediately, but no response comes. She watches the typing indicator appear and disappear several times, can imagine MidnightWanderer starting and stopping messages on the other end. Finally, after what feels like eternity, but is probably just 5 minutes, his response arrives. I've been thinking about this too, but I have to admit I'm terrified. What if meeting changes everything between us? What if the magic we have here doesn't translate to the real world? What if it makes everything even better? Luna shoots back quickly, though her own anxiety perfectly mirrors his. What if we discover that the connection we have is even stronger in person? Or what if we discover we're complete strangers who just deluded themselves into thinking they know each other? The raw vulnerability in his response makes Luna's heart clench. Then at least we'll know. And if we're strangers, well, at least we were strangers who shared something beautiful for a few months. They spend the next hour and a half planning, each detail negotiated with the care of diplomats arranging a peace treaty. MidnightWanderer initially suggests a neutral city between their locations, but Luna has a better idea. What about Millbrook? She types. I have family there. My cousin Clara has lived in the city for 5 years. It would be safer for me, and she could provide backup if we need it. Plus, it's a cute college town with lots of public places. Millbrook is perfect, he responds without hesitation. I know the city a bit. There's a charming bookstore called Between the Lines in the historic downtown. Half cafe, half bookstore. It's exactly the kind of place where two people who met through literature would meet. They settle on a Saturday afternoon, which gives Luna a full week to agonize over every aspect of the meeting. She calls Clara the next morning, trying to explain the situation without sounding completely insane. "So let me get this straight," Clara says after Luna finishes her confused explanation. "You've been talking to this guy online for months? You've never met in person? And now you're having your first date in my city?" "When you put it like that, it sounds even crazier than I thought," Luna admits. "It's not crazy, just modern, I think. Look, of course I'll come along, but I'll stay kind of hidden, watching from a distance. For your safety, but without ruining the date. I can pretend I'm studying or reading." "You do that?" "Luna, you're my favorite cousin, and also the smartest person I know. If you say this guy is worth meeting, then he probably is. But there's no way in hell I'm letting you meet an internet stranger without backup." The conversation leaves Luna feeling simultaneously relieved and more nervous. Having Clara there will be comforting, but it also makes everything more real, more consequential. She spends the week floating in a strange state of anticipation mixed with terror. Her nightly conversations with MidnightWanderer take on a different quality, still intimate and deep, but now tinged with the anticipation of finally meeting in person. "How will I recognize you?" she asks one night, realizing that after months of conversation, she has no idea what he looks like physically. "I'll be reading a book of poetry, probably Neruda. He's always been my favorite poet for public settings. And I'll have a cup of cold coffee, because I know I'll be too nervous to actually drink anything hot. And I'll probably be compulsively fidgeting with my camera strap and checking my phone every 5 seconds to make sure you haven't canceled," Luna responds. "I won't cancel," he writes. "I promise, no matter how terrified I am." I promise too. Saturday arrives with overcast skies and a cool breeze that seems to perfectly match Luna's anxious mood. She wakes up at 6 a.m. after sleeping maybe 3 hours, her stomach full of butterflies that seem to have had too much coffee. She changes clothes 4 times, starting with something too dressy, then too casual, then too try-hard, before finally settling on something that feels genuinely her. A navy vintage dress with a cream cardigan, boots that are comfortable for walking but still look intentional, and her worn leather camera bag slung over her shoulder like familiar armor. Clara drives, maintaining light conversation about everything except the impending meeting, instinctively understanding that Luna needs distraction rather than more analysis. They stop for coffee on the way, and Luna can barely swallow a few sips of her latte. Her stomach is too full of nerves for anything substantial. "Remember," Clara says as they approach Millbrook, "if at any point you want to leave, just text me. I'll invent a family emergency and get you out of there." "What if he's perfect?" Luna asks. "What if all this worrying is for nothing and we're meant for each other?" "Then you owe me a very expensive dinner," Clara says with a smile. "But seriously, cousin, trust your instincts." You have good instincts with people. The Between the Lines bookstore is exactly as charming as Luna expected. A converted Victorian house with floor-to-ceiling shelves, tall windows that let in filtered natural light, and the kind of atmosphere that makes you want to spend hours just browsing. The smell of coffee and old books creates a combination that's both energizing and calming. Clara positions herself strategically at a table in the back, pretending to be absorbed in a thick art history book while keeping Luna clearly in her field of vision. Luna orders her usual drink, a lavender latte with an extra shot, and then scans the cafe area for someone reading poetry. She sees him almost immediately, sitting in a cozy corner near the large windows, a familiar book in his lap, a seemingly untouched cup of coffee on the low table in front of him. But when Luna actually focuses on his face, when she registers his features, her world stops completely. It's Theo, her neighbor Theo, the guy who lives 2 blocks away in the same apartment complex, with whom she's exchanged polite greetings in the lobby hundreds of times, who she occasionally sees at the local coffee shop reading with a cup and a croissant. It's impossible to be mistaken, She knows every detail of that face, from the small scar on his chin that he once mentioned was from a childhood bike accident, to the way his eyes crinkle slightly when he's concentrating. Luna stands in the middle of the bookstore for a full moment, trying to process what she's seeing. Her brain runs through a series of possible explanations. Coincidence? Impossible. Mistaken identity? She's absolutely certain it's Theo. Some kind of elaborate prank? But who would orchestrate that, and why? Taking a deep breath, she approaches the area where he's sitting, each step feeling simultaneously like moving through molasses and falling off a cliff. "Excuse me," she says, her voice coming out slightly hoarse. He looks up, and she's struck by the total familiarity of his eyes, the same eyes she's seen hundreds of times, but now looking at her with focused interest instead of casual recognition. "Are you reading Neruda?" she manages to ask. He smiles, the same gentle smile she knows from elevator encounters, but this time directed specifically at her with intention. "Yes, I am. You must be Luna." The words hit Luna like a wave of cold water. He knows who she is. He was waiting for her. This confirms it's not some crazy coincidence, though it also raises a dozen new questions that make her head spin. Yes, she manages to say, settling into the cushioned chair across from him. Her mind is in complete turmoil, trying to reconcile months of digital intimacy with this impossible revelation. "Are you MidnightWanderer?" "Ethan," he says, extending his hand exactly as Theo would, the same hand she's seen hold keys and coffee and newspapers, but now introducing itself to her as if they're meeting for the first time. "It's good to finally meet you in person." Luna shakes his hand, the familiarity of his touch creating a kind of cognitive dissonance that makes her feel slightly nauseous. For the next 2 hours, they talk exactly as they always do. About books, she discovers he really does love Neruda, not just using the poet as a signal. About the strange loneliness of sleepless nights, about art and philosophy, and the way certain ideas only make sense in the small hours of dawn. But Luna can barely focus on the words. Every facial expression is devastatingly familiar. She's seen this same thoughtful expression when he was deciding between coffee types at the cafe, seen the way he tilts his head when he's really listening, recognizes how he runs his hand through his hair when he's nervous. Her mind is racing with impossible questions she can't ask without revealing that she already knows him. How can Theo be MidnightWanderer? Why didn't he ever say anything during all those casual encounters in the building? Did he know who she was all along during months of intimate conversations? Was it all an elaborate coincidence or some kind of complex psychological game? "You seem distracted," observes Ethan, tilting his head exactly the way Luna has seen Theo do hundreds of times when he notices something off. The gesture is so familiar she almost chokes on her coffee. "It's just surreal to finally meet you," she manages to say, fighting to keep her voice steady. "You are exactly how I imagined and completely different at the same time." "I know what you mean," he responds, and there's something in his tone that makes Luna wonder if he's also struggling with some kind of recognition. Months of building a mental image of someone based only on words, and then suddenly they're here, three-dimensional and real. They talk about the books scattered on the table. He has 3 volumes of poetry and what appears to be a book about color theory. Luna remembers seeing Theo carrying similar books, but she never paid enough attention to notice specific titles. Now she finds herself cataloging every detail, looking for differences that might explain this impossible situation. "You mentioned you work with art," Luna says carefully. "What kind of pieces do you create?" "Mostly installations, exploring perception and memory," he responds, and Luna vaguely remembers seeing Theo carrying art supplies to his apartment. "I'm fascinated by how our experience of reality changes depending on our state of consciousness. Insomnia has given me a unique perspective on that." Every answer only deepens the mystery. You mentioned you work with art, Luna says carefully. What kind of pieces do you create? Mostly installations, exploring perception and memory, he responds, and Luna vaguely remembers seeing Theo carrying art supplies to his apartment. I'm fascinated by how our experience of reality changes depending on our state of consciousness. Insomnia has given me a unique perspective on that. Every answer only deepens the mystery. For 2 hours, Luna operates on 2 simultaneous levels, having a charming conversation with someone who feels like a familiar stranger, while internally struggling to understand how this situation is possible. When they finally say goodbye outside the bookstore, Ethan hugs her hesitantly, the same kind of polite hug Theo might give a neighbor, but now loaded with months of shared emotional intimacy. Luna finds herself analyzing even this. He smells like Theo, moves like Theo, even hugs like she imagines Theo would hug. This was better than I expected, Ethan says, smiling in a way that makes his eyes crinkle at the corners. Thank you for being brave enough to suggest we meet. Thank you for agreeing, Luna responds, still feeling like she's living some kind of vivid dream. The drive here was totally worth it. When she reunites with Clara for the drive back, Luna is in a state of silent shock that she tries to disguise as post-date satisfaction. So, Clara asks as soon as they're in the car. He seemed normal from where I was sitting. Attractive too, I have to add. How was it? It was complicated, Luna manages to say, staring out the window at the passing landscape. Much more complicated than I expected. Complicated how? Was he weird? Not what you expected? No, he was exactly what I expected. That's the complicated part. Clara glances at her sideways. That doesn't make any sense, cousin. I know, Luna sighs. Believe me, I know. Luna spends the next 2 days in a strange state of emotional suspension, replaying every moment of the meeting until the memories become worn like overhandled photographs. She oscillates between accepting that she had a wonderful date with someone who happens to look like her neighbor and the growing certainty that there's something more happening here than coincidence. On Tuesday night, after spending a full hour typing and deleting messages to MidnightWanderer without actually sending any, Luna makes a decision she would never have considered before the Millbrook meeting. She's going to Theo's apartment. She's never done this before. In 2 years of living in the same complex, their interactions have been limited to polite smiles in the lobby, occasional waves when passing in the parking lot, and one single time when he held the elevator door for her when she was carrying heavy groceries. They don't have that kind of intimacy. They're just neighbors who recognize each other, nothing more. But now, armed with the impossible knowledge that he might be MidnightWanderer, she needs to understand what's happening, even if it means crossing social boundaries she's never considered crossing before. Luna climbs 2 flights of stairs to his floor, her heart pounding against her ribs. She stands in front of door 3B for a full minute, trying to imagine how she'll explain this sudden visit if Theo really has no idea what she's talking about. Finally, she raises her hand and rings the doorbell before she can talk herself out of it. The person who answers the door isn't Theo. It's a middle-aged woman with the same face shape and kind eyes, obviously his mother. Luna vaguely remembers seeing her a few times over the years, usually carrying grocery bags or trays of homemade food. "Hi," Luna says, immediately feeling embarrassed and intrusive. "Sorry to bother you. Is Theo home? I'm Luna. I live in the building." The woman smiles warmly, the kind of smile that completely transforms her face. "Oh, hi, honey. I've always wondered about the pretty girl I sometimes see in the lobby. Unfortunately, Theo isn't home. He's traveling. Went to visit his father. Should be back by the end of the week." The words hit lightning, cutting through a storm. The realization is so sudden and overwhelming that she has to discreetly lean against the doorframe to steady herself. "Oh," she manages to say, trying to keep her voice casual, despite the fact that her mind has just completely reorganized its understanding of the last 3 days. "Okay, when did he leave for the trip?" Saturday morning, early. He hasn't seen his father in months, so he decided to make a surprise visit. Saturday morning, exactly when Luna was driving to Millbrook to meet MidnightWanderer. Not Saturday night, not Sunday. Saturday morning, hours before their scheduled meeting. "Is everything okay, honey?" asks Theo's mother, her expression shifting to concern. "You look a little pale." "I'm fine," Luna lies quickly. "Just wanted to ask about something. It's not urgent. Thank you." She practically runs back to her apartment, her mind racing faster than her feet. As her apartment door closes behind her, a single word echoes in her head like a bell. Eureka! Now everything makes sense. Now she understands what really happened. Theo wasn't home because he was in Millbrook, pretending to be MidnightWanderer. He had lied to his mother about where he was going, said he was visiting his father when he was actually driving to meet her. For some reason, maybe shyness, maybe some elaborate psychological game, maybe fear of ruining their neighborly friendship, he had created this online persona to get close to her. Luna sinks onto her couch, her mind processing all the implications. For months, she had been intimate with Theo without knowing it. Every night when she thought she was talking to a mysterious stranger, she was actually speaking with the man who lived 2 blocks away. Every time she saw him in the lobby, he was secretly knowing intimate things about her. Her fears, her dreams, her deepest thoughts shared in the depths of insomnia. At first, Luna feels betrayed, like she's been the victim of some kind of elaborate prank. The intimacy she thought she'd built with a stranger was actually, what? A lie? A game? But then, as her breathing slows and she can think more clearly, other feelings begin to emerge. There's something almost romantic about it, if she can get past the initial feeling of being deceived. All this time, the man of her dreams was living 2 blocks away. All those nights of loneliness, wishing for connection, and she was already connected to someone. She just didn't know it. Maybe he was too shy to approach in person. Maybe the online persona was the only way he could truly express himself, show the depths of his personality that he couldn't reveal during casual neighborly interactions. Maybe he was as attracted to her as she was to MidnightWanderer, but didn't know how to transition from polite neighbors to something more meaningful. Luna spends the rest of Tuesday and all of Wednesday crafting theories, alternating between feeling deceived and touched, between anger and admiration for the creativity of the approach. By Thursday, she makes a decision. If Theo wants to play this game, she'll play along. But now she knows the rules. When Theo returns from his trip on Friday night, Luna is ready. She spent the last few days planning her strategy like a general preparing for battle. If he wants to maintain this elaborate facade, she can play along. But this time, she has the advantage of knowing what's really happening. She encounters him returning to the building around 6:30 p.m., carrying a leather suitcase she's never seen before. Probably part of the act, she thinks. He looks relaxed, tanned, like someone who really spent time outdoors with family. "Theo," she says, as if running into him is a delightful surprise, instead of something she's been obsessively planning. "Good to see you back. How was the trip?" He stops in the lobby, seemingly surprised by her friendly approach. Normally, their interactions don't go beyond polite greetings and weather comments. "It was good," he responds, looking slightly puzzled but pleased by her attention. "Visited my father. It had been too long since we really spent time together." Luna watches his expression carefully, looking for signs that he's lying, that he knows she knows. But Theo seems genuinely relaxed, like someone who really spent a pleasant week with family, instead of orchestrating an elaborate meeting in a city 2 hours away. "That's nice," she says, testing the waters. "My weekend was interesting too. I went to visit my cousin in Millbrook." For a fraction of a second, so brief she almost misses it, she thinks she sees something pass across Theo's face. A small blink, an almost imperceptible pause. Maybe just a subtle change in how he holds his shoulders. But it passes so quickly, she's not sure if she really saw it or if her hyper-vigilant mind is imagining signs. Millbrook is a beautiful town, he says, and there's something in his tone that makes Luna's heart race. I've been there a few times over the years. That's it, an almost direct admission. He knows Millbrook, has been there before. This has to be his way of hinting that he knows exactly where she was without directly confessing. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, Luna says, trying to sound casual while internally celebrating having found a crack in his facade. You could tell me about your trip, and I can share about mine. I'd love that, Theo responds, and his smile seems genuinely happy, as if the idea of spending more time with her is an unexpected gift rather than part of some elaborate plan. That night, Luna is online promptly at 2 a.m., waiting for MidnightWanderer with anticipation that's now tinged with secret knowledge. When he appears, she's ready to test her theory with surgical subtlety. "How was your weekend?" she types, watching every word he chooses. "Quiet. Spent time with family. Sometimes it's good to disconnect from routine, get out of my usual space, and just breathe, you know?" Family. Exactly the same word Theo had used, phrased in the same vague way that could mean father, parents, relatives, anything that would justify a weekend trip. "I understand perfectly," Luna responds. "I was out of town too. Went to visit my cousin." "What a coincidence. Where did you go?" "Millbrook. Do you know it?" There's a pause, just 3 seconds, but in a conversation where they normally respond instantly, 3 seconds feels like an eternity. Luna counts mentally. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. "I do know it. It's a charming town. Has a lovely bookstore downtown, if I'm not mistaken. Between the Lines, I think it's called." The exact same words Theo had used. Not just that he knew Millbrook, but specifically about the bookstore, specifically the correct name that someone would have to have visited recently to remember accurately. Luna smiles at her laptop screen, feeling a mixture of triumph and disbelief. He's really maintaining this charade even after meeting her in person. The dedication to the game is almost impressive. "Yes, exactly that bookstore. I spent a few hours there on Saturday. It's the kind of place where you can easily lose track of time." Saturday. Interesting timing coincidence. I was also away on Saturday. The admission is so close to a confession that Luna has to force herself not to type something direct like, "I know you're Theo." Instead, she plays along. Small world, isn't it? Maybe we were even in the same area without knowing. "Maybe," he responds, and Luna imagines she can detect amusement in his tone even through text. That would be an incredible coincidence. Over the next 2 weeks, Luna finds herself living a surreal, bifurcated existence that's simultaneously exhausting and addictive. During the day, she strategically approaches Theo with the precision of a literature scholar excavating layers of meaning in a complex text. She starts small, maintaining slightly longer conversations when they meet in the lobby, finding excuses to be in the parking lot when she knows he normally returns from work, casually frequenting the local coffee shop at times when she usually sees him there. Theo seems delighted by her sudden attention. He's sweet, funny, and Luna can see why she'd fallen for his online persona. But there's something almost surreal about watching someone she knows so intimately act as if it's the first time they're really talking. "Do you like to read?" he asks during one of their coffee shop conversations, gesturing to the stack of books she always carries. It's the same question someone would ask when meeting a person for the first time. But Luna knows he knows she writes poetry, that she loves mid-century memoirs, that she has strong opinions about Sylvia Plath. "A little," she responds, testing to see if he'll reveal deeper knowledge. "Mostly poetry and more introspective literature. What about you?" "Me too. There's something about poetry that seems to capture truths that prose sometimes misses, especially when read in certain states of mind." The oblique reference to insomnia is so obvious Luna almost laughs. He's dropping hints, playing at the edges of his double life without completely crossing the line into direct confession. At night, she continues her conversations with MidnightWanderer, now with a new dimension of context that makes every exchange simultaneously familiar and bizarre. When he mentions feeling connected to someone new in his life, she knows he's talking about their daytime interactions. When she describes her growing attraction to a neighbor, he responds with advice and encouragement that's almost ironic in its apparent sincerity. "Tell me about this neighbor," MidnightWanderer types on a Thursday night after Luna mentions being confused about someone close to home. "He's kind," Luna responds, choosing each word carefully while imagining Theo on the other side of the conversation, maybe even smiling at her descriptions of himself. "Intelligent. There's something about him that makes me feel understood, like he knows me better than I know myself sometimes." That sounds special. Do you think he feels the same way? Luna almost chokes on her tea. The audacity of Theo asking about his own feelings through his online persona is simultaneously impressive and slightly maddening. "I think so," she types. "Sometimes when we talk, it's like he's holding something back, like there are layers he's not ready to show me yet, like he has a secret life or something." Maybe he's waiting for the right moment. Some of us are better at expressing our true feelings in certain situations than others. Maybe he's trying to find the right way to open up to you. The irony is so delicious and frustrating that Luna has to step away from the laptop for a moment to process. Here's Theo, through MidnightWanderer, essentially advising her on how to handle Theo, while she pretends not to know they're the same person. "What about you?" she types when she returns. "Any romantic interests in your life?" The pause is longer this time. "There is someone who's become important to me very quickly, but it's complicated." "Complicated how?" "She might be interested in someone else, someone who can give her things I can't. Stability, physical presence, a more conventional relationship." Luna stares at the screen, trying to process the layers of self-referential irony in what she just read. Theo, as MidnightWanderer, is expressing concern that she might be interested in someone else. Himself, as Theo, who can offer things MidnightWanderer can't. Physical presence, which she doesn't know she actually has access to through Theo. It's like watching someone play three-dimensional chess with himself. But the more time Luna spends navigating between her two realities, the more small inconsistencies begin to bother her, like pebbles in her shoes, minor irritations that gradually become impossible to ignore. The first real discrepancy arises on a Sunday afternoon when Luna is in Theo's apartment for the first time. They'd progressed to casual coffee dates that sometimes extended to longer conversations, and when it started raining, he offered for her to wait out the storm in his apartment instead of running back to her car. His apartment is exactly what she'd expect based on months of conversations with MidnightWanderer, books everywhere, interesting artwork, much of which she recognizes from partially obscured photos he'd shared, an overall atmosphere of organized creativity. But while she's admiring his bookshelves, something on the wall catches her attention in a way that makes her stop completely. They're childhood photos, a framed collection showing Theo at various ages, from baby to teenager. There's something about these photos that disturbs her in a way she can't initially identify. She studies them while Theo is in the kitchen making coffee, trying to understand why she feels like something is wrong. "You were an adorable child," she comments when he returns with 2 mugs. "My mom loves these photos," Theo says, joining her in front of the wall. "She says I haven't changed at all. Same stubborn personality, same weird interests." Luna looks from the photos to Theo and back to the photos. It's definitely him in every image. She can trace the progression of his facial features from childhood to adulthood. But there's something about the photos that doesn't match with something she knows, though she can't pinpoint exactly what. "Did you hurt your chin as a child?" she asks, noticing that even in the earliest photos, there's a small mark. "Bike accident when I was 7, he responds automatically. "My mom was more traumatized than I was." It's the same story Luna remembers him mentioning casually once in the elevator months ago. But for some reason, while looking at the photo of 7-year-old Theo with a bandage on his chin, something feels off. She can't identify what, but there's a subtle dissonance that bothers her. That night, during her conversations with MidnightWanderer, she decides to test something. "Do you have photos from when you were a child?" she types casually. "A few. Why do you ask?" "Just curiosity. Sometimes I try to imagine what people looked like when they were younger, especially people I only know through text. I looked pretty much like I do now. Same eyes, same crooked smile that my mom always nagged me to fix." Luna frowns. Crooked smile? But Theo's smile isn't crooked. It's perfectly symmetrical, the kind of smile she specifically noticed because it's unusually balanced. It's a small detail, but it's the type of thing you wouldn't casually lie about, especially when describing a basic physical characteristic. The second discrepancy is more disturbing. Luna had started paying closer attention to the timing of their online conversations versus Theo's activities, looking for patterns that would confirm her suspicions. Most nights, the timing works out. MidnightWanderer appears online at approximately the same time the lights go out in Theo's apartment. She can see his window from her own window if she leans at a certain angle. But on a Wednesday night, something doesn't add up. "I'm having one of those nights again," MidnightWanderer types at 4:17 a.m. "It's past 4, and I haven't been able to close my eyes. Insomnia is being particularly cruel tonight." Luna checks the time. He's right. It's exactly 4:17 a.m. But then she remembers something that makes her pause. The previous afternoon, around 4:30 p.m., she had run into Theo in the lobby when he was returning home. He had mentioned going to bed early because he'd spent the previous night working on a project and was exhausted. "I'm sleeping at 9 p.m. tonight," he had said, rubbing his eyes in a way that suggested genuine tiredness. "I need at least 10 hours if I'm going to function tomorrow." How could he be planning to sleep at 9 p.m. and then spend the entire night awake? Even with insomnia, that doesn't make sense. If you're exhausted enough to sleep at 9 p.m., you usually get at least a few hours before insomnia kicks in. The most disturbing discrepancy comes when Luna decides to make a deliberate test. During a nighttime conversation with MidnightWanderer, she mentions an obscure film she'd watched, a Hungarian documentary about insomniac artists that she was sure would be exactly the kind of thing someone like him would be interested in. "I watched this incredible film last night," she types. "It's called Endless Nights. It's about this group of painters in Budapest who only worked between midnight and 6 a.m. The way they describe dawn consciousness is exactly how you always talk about it." MidnightWanderer responds enthusiastically. "That sounds exactly like something I'd love. Where did you find it? Is it available online?" "I think it's on the Criterion channel. You should definitely watch it." "I'll look for it tonight. Thanks for the recommendation." The next day, Luna brings up the same film in a conversation with Theo during one of their coffee dates, testing to see if he'd react with recognition if MidnightWanderer had actually watched it. "I watched this fascinating documentary last night," she says, carefully watching his reaction. "About insomniac artists in Budapest. A lot of what they say about nighttime creativity reminded me of some conversations we've had about art." Theo looks genuinely confused. "Never heard of it. Sounds interesting, but art documentaries aren't really my thing. I'm more of a sci-fi or comedy guy for nighttime entertainment." The chill Luna feels in her stomach has nothing to do with the coffee shop's air conditioning. MidnightWanderer had responded enthusiastically to the film, saying it was exactly the kind of thing he'd love. Theo is saying art documentaries aren't his style. They're completely different tastes. The fourth discrepancy is the one that finally forces Luna to confront that her assumptions might be wrong. She'd noticed that MidnightWanderer sometimes mentioned details about his environment, the sound of rain on his windows, specific birds he heard in the morning, the view from his window during dawn. On a Thursday night, he mentions, "There's a family of cardinals that's nested in the tree outside my window. Every morning around 6 a.m., they make the biggest racket. Normally it would annoy me, but there's something comforting about knowing there's life happening around me even when I feel isolated." But Luna knows there are no cardinals in the area where she and Theo live. She's a casual birdwatcher and is familiar with local species, mostly sparrows, urban pigeons, and occasionally crows. Cardinals are more common in suburban areas with more native vegetation. Plus, she can see Theo's apartment from her window if she leans at a certain angle, and she knows it faces the parking lot, not trees. Luna's growing suspicion leads her to do something she's never considered before, something that makes her feel part detective and part stalker. She decides to track MidnightWanderer's actual location through technical clues. She starts subtly, paying attention to small details he mentions casually, weather references, local businesses, specific events she can try to verify. But MidnightWanderer has always been vague about location, sharing only general atmospheric details about urban nights and dawns. That's when Luna remembers something she'd overlooked before, the art photos he'd shared months ago. She goes back through their saved conversations, looking for images she'd seen but not analyzed carefully at the time. There it is, a photo of one of his pieces, taken in his studio or workspace. In the corner of the image, almost out of frame, is something she'd completely ignored the first time she saw it, a crumpled coffee receipt on a table. Luna enlarges the image until her eyes hurt, trying to decipher the blurred text. The quality isn't perfect, but she can make out enough. "Millbrook Coffee Co. Thank you for your visit." Her heart stops completely. Millbrook, the town where they met. The town that's 2 hours away from her city, not in the local area where Theo lives. But this is impossible. How can Theo have a Millbrook coffee receipt in his studio if he lives here? Unless the receipt is old from a previous visit. Or unless the photo wasn't taken in his main studio, but in a temporary space in Millbrook. Luna looks at the photo again, this time paying attention to the background instead of the foreground. The space looks residential, not a commercial art studio, but maybe a converted room or home office space. The walls are a color she doesn't recognize, the kind of sage green that's popular in rental apartments. She saves the image and spends the next hour trying to find more clues in their conversations. That's when she remembers a tool a photographer friend had mentioned, a website that can try to track location metadata from images if the person posting them wasn't careful about privacy. It takes 3 different attempts with different sites before she finds one that works. When the results appear, Luna has to read twice to make sure she's seeing correctly. Estimated location, Millbrook, NY. Approximate coordinates place the photo as having been taken in the residential area east of downtown. Not just occasionally in Millbrook, not just visiting Millbrook, living in Millbrook. Luna stares at the screen, trying to process this information. If MidnightWanderer lives in Millbrook, then he can't be Theo, who definitely lives here. Unless Theo has a second residence she doesn't know about, or unless he recently moved, or unless they're not the same person. The realization hits Luna like ice water being poured over her head. For weeks, she'd been operating under the assumption that she was dealing with one elaborately dishonest person, building complex theories about motivations and methods. But what if she's dealing with 2 completely different people who simply look impossibly alike? But that doesn't make sense. Nobody looks that exactly like another person by pure coincidence. The resemblance between Ethan, MidnightWanderer, and Theo is too perfect, too complete. Unless it's not coincidence. Unless there's an explanation she never considered because it seemed too impossible, too cinematic to be real. Luna closes the laptop and walks around her apartment for 20 minutes, trying to organize her thoughts. They sit in the living room, and Luna offers coffee, which he accepts gratefully. For 20 minutes, they make small talk about his trip, about her apartment, about how strange it is to finally be in the same physical space after months of digital conversation. But Luna is studying every detail, cataloging differences. The way Ethan holds his coffee cup with both hands as if warming himself, while Theo always holds with just one hand. How he sits, leaning slightly forward, attentive, while Theo has a tendency to recline, relaxed. Small differences, but real differences. Ethan, Luna finally says, deciding it's time for complete honesty, I need to ask you some questions that might sound strange. Okay, after everything we've shared, I think I can handle strange. Do you have a brother? The question clearly catches him off guard. His coffee cup stops halfway to his mouth, and he looks at her with an expression that mixes confusion with something that might be alarm. Not that I know of. Why do you ask? Because there's someone in this city, actually in this building, who looks exactly like you. And when I say exactly, I mean you're indistinguishable. Ethan's face goes completely pale. That's impossible. I thought the same thing. For weeks, actually, I thought you were the same person, that you were maintaining some kind of double identity. Wait, Ethan says, setting his coffee cup on the table with hands that are visibly shaking. You thought I was someone else? That I was lying about who I am? Luna explains everything. How she'd confused Ethan with Theo at the Millbrook meeting, how she'd assumed they were the same person because of the identical appearance, the weeks of confusion and investigation that followed, the inconsistencies that finally led her to realize they might be different people. Ethan listens in growing silence, his expression shifting from disbelief to something approaching terror. You need to show me, he says finally, his voice barely audible. I need to see this person. Luna picks up her phone. Theo lives just 2 blocks away, and she has his number since they exchanged contact information for coffee plans. Her hands tremble slightly as she dials. Theo, it's Luna. Could you come to my apartment? There's something important I need to show you. It's urgent. Is everything okay? Theo asks, his voice carrying genuine concern. You sound strange. I'm fine, but I need you to come. Apartment 2A. It's really important. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When she hangs up, Ethan is standing, pacing around the room like a caged animal. This doesn't make sense, he's muttering. This isn't possible. People don't look like this without being related, and I know my family history. I know I don't have brothers. What if you didn't know? Luna asks gently. What if there was something about your history that you don't know? 15 minutes later, the doorbell rings again. Luna goes to the door, Ethan standing behind her, and opens it to find Theo in the hallway with a concerned expression. Luna, what's so urgent that... Theo begins, but his voice dies when he sees Ethan standing in the living room. The silence that follows is so complete, Luna can hear the kitchen clock ticking, the distant hum of traffic outside, her own loud breathing. The 2 men stare at each other across the apartment, and Luna watches with fascination and horror as identical expressions of complete shock spread across identical faces. What the hell? Theo whispers. This isn't possible, Ethan says, his voice almost inaudible. Luna stands between them, witnessing the impossible moment she orchestrated. Theo, meet Ethan. Ethan, meet Theo. I think you two have a lot to talk about. What follows is the most surreal conversation of Luna's life. Theo and Ethan sitting across from each other in her living room, comparing details of their lives, like detectives trying to solve a mystery that defies rational explanation. At first, they talk over each other, identical voices creating a strange echo. How is this possible? You look exactly like me. This has to be some kind of prank. Then they stop, look at each other, and try again more systematically. "What's your birth date?" Luna asks, deciding someone needs to impose order on this chaos. "March 15th, 1995, Theo says. "March 15th, 1995, Ethan echoes, his voice growing fainter with each word. "Where were you born?" "St. Mary's Hospital," Theo says. "My adoption papers say St. Mary's Hospital," Ethan confirms. And the word adoption changes the entire dynamic of the room, like someone had turned on a light. "You were adopted?" Theo asks, his voice loaded with sudden meaning. "As a baby? My adoptive parents always said it was a private arrangement, that my birth mother couldn't take care of me." Ethan hesitates, then adds, "They were always vague about the details, said sometimes it's better not to know too much about difficult circumstances." Theo is silent for a long moment, his expression cycling through several emotions before settling on something that looks like painful recognition. My parents divorced when I was 5, he says slowly. "My mother always said it was because they lost a baby before me, a brother who died at birth. She never talked much about it, but I could see how much it hurt. But I didn't die," Ethan says simply. "No," Theo agrees, "you didn't die." Luna watches both men process this impossible revelation. She can see the pieces clicking together in their minds, the sense of incompleteness they'd both carried their entire lives, the strange familiarity they felt with each other, even through a computer screen, the shared insomnia that had led them to seek connection in the same places. The insomnia, Luna realizes out loud. "You both have severe insomnia. Ethan, you said you always felt like something was missing." "Theo, you mentioned feeling incomplete sometimes, especially at night. It's like part of me was always searching for something," Ethan says. "Or someone. I used to have dreams as a child," Theo adds. "Dreams about having a brother. My mom said it was normal for children to imagine companions when they feel lonely." "But they weren't imaginary," Luna says softly. "You were dreaming about each other." The two men look at each other again, and Luna can see recognition dawning in their faces. Not just that they look alike, but that they're fundamentally connected in ways that go beyond physical appearance. "We need to call my parents," Theo says finally. "They need to know about this." "What if they knew?" Ethan asks, his voice carrying decades of unanswered questions. "What if they gave me away on purpose? What if they didn't want me?" "Then we'll find out the truth," Luna says firmly. "All of us, together. Whatever the truth is, you deserve to know." Theo picks up his phone, his hands shaking slightly as he dials his parents' number. "Mom, it's me. I need you and Dad to come to a friend's apartment. Now. No, I'm not hurt, but it's urgent. Mom, I need you to sit down before I tell you this. I found my brother. The brother you thought died. He's alive, and he's here with me." The silence from the other end of the phone is so complete, Luna can hear it even from where she's sitting. "Mom, are you there?" We'll be there in 20 minutes, comes the response, the voice so low it's barely audible. The 20-minute wait passes like eternity, and a second simultaneously. Theo and Ethan spend the time comparing more details, scars, memories, preferences that are simultaneously identical and slightly different. Luna documents some of it with her camera, instinctively understanding that she's witnessing something historically significant. "Do you have a scar on your left knee?" Theo asks. "Skating accident when I was 9, Ethan confirms. "You too?" "Same accident, same age. But I was trying to impress a girl at school. I was trying to impress my adoptive father." Small variations on the same story, like their lives were two versions of a song played in slightly different keys. When the doorbell rings, the sound echoes through the apartment like a funeral bell. Luna opens the door to find Theo's parents. She'd seen them a few times over the years, but now she really studies them, looking for resemblances with Ethan. His mother is a small woman with kind eyes that carry the weight of years of unresolved grief. His father is taller, with the same face shape Luna can see in both sons. When they enter the living room and see their two sons side by side for the first time in 26 years, the reaction is immediate and devastating. The water glass Theo's mother was carrying slips from her hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. His father grabs the doorframe for support, all color draining from his face. "This isn't possible," the mother whispers. But even as she says it, she's moving toward Ethan as if pulled by magnetic force. "Mom," Theo says softly, "this is Ethan. They told us he died." "They told us you died," she responds, her voice breaking completely. "The doctors said there were complications with the second baby, that you didn't survive the birth. They said it was better not to see, that we should focus on the healthy baby we had. But I survived," Ethan says, his own voice choked with emotion. "I'm here." Theo's mother approaches hesitantly, as if Ethan might disappear if she moves too fast. Can I touch your face?" Ethan nods, tears streaming down his cheeks. When she touches his cheek with trembling fingers, he leans into the touch like a plant toward sunlight. "You have the same little scar on your chin as Theo," she whispers in wonder. "The same one he got, bike accident, when I was 7, both say in unison, then look at each other with a mixture of amazement and recognition. Theo's father finds his voice. "There was so much confusion that day at the hospital. Paperwork that didn't make sense, social workers apologizing for documentation errors, a nurse who seemed on the verge of a nervous breakdown. We thought it was just normal medical chaos. Someone made a mistake," Luna says gently. "Or maybe it was intentionally covered up. Either way, 2 families were destroyed by it." Theo's mother, now mother to both Theo and Ethan, pulls both sons into a hug that's simultaneously an ending and a beginning. The father joins them, and for a moment, Luna's living room becomes the scene of a reunion 26 years in the making. "I'm sorry," the mother whispers to Ethan. "I'm sorry you grew up thinking you weren't wanted. I'm sorry we lost 26 years together." "You didn't know," Ethan responds. "Nobody knew, but now we know," Theo says, "and now we can start making up for lost time." Luna discreetly retreats to the kitchen, giving the family space for their reunion while cleaning up the broken glass. But she can hear them talking, sharing stories, filling in decades of gaps with the urgency of people who know they have a lot of lost time to make up for. It's when she hears the mother asking about Ethan's adoptive family that Luna realizes this story has more layers to unfold. "Did they know?" the mother asks. "Your adoptive family, did they know you had a twin brother?" Ethan's expression becomes complex. "Now that I think about it, there were always things they wouldn't tell me. Vague answers when I asked about my history. I always felt like they were holding something back. Maybe they were victims too," the father suggests. "Maybe they were told you were a baby with no family, not knowing there were parents who thought you had died. Or maybe they knew more than they admitted," Ethan says. "I need to have a conversation with them." Luna rejoins the group. "There's something you should all know," she says, "about how Ethan and I met, and how this led to finding you." She tells the whole story, the insomnia forum, months of intimate conversations, how the search for connection had brought them all together in ways none of them could have predicted. "So you were both looking for each other without knowing," the mother says, amazed. "The insomnia, the feeling that something was missing, you were missing each other. And instead of finding each other," the father adds, "you both found Luna." "Not instead of," Luna corrects, "in addition to. They found each other through me." It's an important distinction, because as she watches this family reunion unfold, Luna realizes that her own story with both men is far from over. The discovery that they're brothers doesn't resolve her complicated feelings. It just makes them more complex. In the weeks following the family reunion, Luna finds herself navigating emotional terrain that no relationship manual could have prepared her for. Theo and Ethan become almost inseparable, making up for lost years with an intensity that's simultaneously beautiful and overwhelming to witness. They discover they don't just share physical appearance, but an intricate web of similarities that go beyond genetics. Both are left-handed, both have the same specific allergy to shellfish they never mentioned to each other, both developed the habit of organizing books by color instead of alphabetically. But there are also stark differences that make sense of their separate upbringings. Theo is more outgoing, more comfortable in social spaces, having grown up with parents who encouraged him to express himself openly. Ethan is more introspective, more cautious, carrying the subtle emotional scars of always feeling slightly displaced, even in a loving family that could never quite explain why he felt different. "It's like looking at an alternate version of myself," Theo confesses to Luna during one of their conversations. "If I had grown up with insecurity instead of confidence, with questions instead of certainties." "And how does that feel?" Luna asks, "discovering you have a twin brother at 26? Theo considers this. "Revelatory. Scary. Like half my life has been a lie, but not a lie that anyone told intentionally. Just a tragedy of misinformation that perpetuated itself for decades." But the brothers' reunion also forces Luna to confront questions about her own relationships with both men that she's been avoiding. "I need you to be honest with me," Ethan says to her during a private conversation a few weeks after the revelation. They're walking through the same park where she first met MidnightWanderer, but now the dynamic between them has changed completely. About what? Though Luna knows exactly what he wants to talk about. About your feelings. For me, for Theo, for this whole impossible situation. Luna stops walking, knowing the moment for complete honesty has arrived. "I fell in love with two people," she says finally. "Or what I thought were two people. Now that I know you're brothers, I don't know what that means about my feelings." "Tell me how you feel about each of us," Ethan says, separately. It's a question Luna has been avoiding asking herself, but now she can't escape it. "With you," she says slowly, "I feel understood in ways I've never experienced before. Our nighttime conversations created an intimacy that feels sacred, like you knew parts of me I barely know myself. And with Theo? With Theo, I feel grounded, present, like I could sleep at night and still be myself in the morning, like I don't need to be insomniac to be interesting." Ethan nods slowly. "So I'm your midnight self, and he's your daytime self? Maybe. I don't know. This is all so confusing." "Luna," Ethan says, stopping to look at her directly, "I need to tell you something I've been realizing these past few weeks. I fell in love with the idea of connection more than with you specifically." The words sting, even though Luna suspects there's truth in them. "What do you mean?" "I was so desperate to find my person, the person who would explain why I always felt incomplete, that I turned you into everything that was missing from my life. But that's not love, that's need. And now that you found Theo, now I understand what was really missing. It wasn't a romantic partner, it was my family. It was my other half in the most literal sense possible." Luna feels tears forming, though she's not sure if they're from relief or sadness. "That doesn't mean what we had wasn't real," Ethan continues quickly, "but it means it was transitional. It was supposed to lead me to where I needed to be, not be the final destination." "What about Theo?" Luna asks. "How do you feel about my relationship with him?" "With Theo, you have something I could never give you. You chose him not because you needed him to feel complete, but because you love him for who he is. That's the kind of love that lasts." That night, Luna has a similar conversation with Theo, though the dynamic is different. They're in his apartment, sharing Chinese takeout and wine, the atmosphere more intimate and domestic than her conversations with Ethan. "How are you handling all this?" she asks. "Finding out you have a twin brother, that your whole family history was different than you thought? It's overwhelming," Theo admits, "but also liberating. I always felt like something was missing, and now I know what it was. I don't have to wonder about that vague sense of incompleteness anymore. What about us? How does this affect what we have?" Theo considers this while twirling lo mein around his fork. "Finding Ethan doesn't change how I feel about you," he says finally. "If anything, it makes me more certain." "More certain of what?" "That I don't need you to complete me, Luna. I want you." "There's a difference." Luna feels the distinction viscerally. "Explain." "Ethan needed a connection to feel whole. You became that connection, but it was based on need, not choice. With me, I feel complete with or without you, but I choose you because life is better with you in it. Even knowing that I fell in love with Ethan too? Especially knowing that, because it shows me you're capable of deep love, of real connection. And you chose to build something with me in the real world, not just in digital space." They sit in comfortable silence for a moment, processing the complexities of their feelings in the context of the impossible discovery of lost twins and unexpected connections. "Theo," Luna says finally, "I need you to know that when I first started getting close to you, it was because I thought you were MidnightWanderer. I thought you were playing some kind of game." "I know." "You know." "You weren't exactly subtle," he says with a gentle smile. "Out of nowhere, you went from polite neighbor to being everywhere I was, asking questions about my life, clearly investigating something. At first I thought maybe you were interested romantically and were just very direct about it." "When did you realize it was something different?" "When you mentioned Millbrook, and I saw recognition in your eyes when I said I knew the city. And then when you started asking specific questions about my sleep schedule, my hobbies, it became clear you thought you knew me from somewhere." Luna feels slightly mortified. "So you knew I was investigating you this whole time?" "More or less. But I was also genuinely interested in you, so I didn't mind. Actually, your intensity was intriguing. You clearly cared deeply about something, and I wanted to understand what. And now you understand. Now I understand that you were trying to solve a mystery that was much bigger than any of us could have imagined." Luna curls up against him on the couch, feeling for the first time in months that maybe she doesn't need to solve everything, doesn't need to understand every nuance of her feelings to move forward. "There's one thing I still don't understand," she says. "If you're twins, why are you so different in some ways? Ethan is nocturnal, you're diurnal. He's introspective, you're social. How does that happen with genetically identical people?" "Nature versus nurture," Theo responds. "Identical genes, but completely different environments. Ethan grew up always feeling slightly displaced, so he turned inward. I grew up feeling secure and loved, so I turned outward. Our insomnia comes from the same place, a sense that something was missing. But I dealt with it by keeping busy during the day to tire myself out at night, while he embraced the sleepless hours as time for deep reflection. And now that you found each other, now maybe we can both start sleeping better," Theo laughs. "Though I hope he keeps some of his deep nighttime conversations. There's wisdom in what he learned during all those years of insomnia that I'd like to understand." With the family reunited and relationships settling into a new normal, attention turns to understanding exactly what happened at St. Mary's Hospital 26 years ago. The investigation is led by Theo's father, who works as a lawyer and has experience navigating medical bureaucracies. "I got access to the hospital records," he announces during a family dinner a few weeks later, the first real family dinner that's included Ethan since he was a baby. "What I found is disturbing." They gather in the living room, Theo's parents sitting together on the couch, Theo and Ethan in chairs on either side of them like symmetrical guards, Luna watching from the nearby armchair with her camera, discreetly documenting this historic moment. There wasn't just one error, but a series of compounded mistakes, the father continues, and some of them appear to have been intentionally covered up. He spreads documents across the coffee table: birth certificates, medical records, correspondence between the hospital and adoption agencies. First, there really were complications during the birth. Both babies needed intensive medical care immediately after birth. But instead of properly informing the parents about both children's condition, the medical staff panicked. Panicked about what? The mother asks. Liability. They had 2 babies in critical condition and an inexperienced medical team supervising. When it became clear that both children would likely survive, but that there were questions about potential medical negligence, someone made a terrible decision. The father points to a specific document. This is an internal report that wasn't supposed to exist. It outlines a plan to inform the parents that one child died while secretly arranging for that child to be adopted through a private agency that asked minimal questions. They covered it up on purpose, Ethan whispers. Not just covered up, they intentionally separated you to avoid a malpractice lawsuit. If you had grown up together and developed health problems related to birth trauma, the hospital could have faced a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. But we didn't develop health problems, Theo says. No, but they didn't know that at the time. It was a gamble, and they chose to protect the hospital instead of protecting your family. Luna leans forward, studying the documents. Does this mean Ethan's adoptive family knew? That's where it gets complicated, the father responds. The records suggest they were told they were adopting a baby whose parents died in a car accident. They didn't know about the twin brother, didn't know about the medical complications, didn't know about the living biological parents who were grieving the loss of a child. So everyone was a victim, the mother says, her voice heavy with anger and sadness. Everyone except the hospital and the specific people who made these decisions. And most of those people were still alive until recently. Ethan is quiet for a long moment. Can I sue the hospital? You can, the father confirms. The statute of limitations is complicated, but there are precedents for cases involving intentional cover-ups. More importantly, you can ensure this never happens to another family. But first, the mother says, we need to tell Ethan's adoptive parents what we discovered. They deserve to know the truth, too. The call to Ethan's adoptive parents happens on a Tuesday afternoon, with the entire family gathered in Luna's apartment, which has become neutral territory for difficult discussions. Ethan is visibly nervous as he dials the number, uncertain how to explain a situation that defies all logic. "Mom," he says when she answers, "it's me. I need to tell you something. No, I'm fine. No, I'm not in trouble. But I discovered something about my adoption that changes everything." Luna can only hear one side of the conversation, but she can see the range of emotions passing over Ethan's face as he explains. His adoptive mother's initial confusion, disbelief, then growing horror as she realizes the implications. "Do you want to talk to him?" Ethan eventually asks, holding the phone out to Theo. "She wants to hear your voice to make sure I'm not pranking her." Theo takes the phone. "Hello, Mrs. Williams. I'm Theo. Yes, I really exist. No, this isn't a prank." The call lasts 2 hours, with the phone being passed between family members as each person shares their perspective on the events of the last few months. By the end, Ethan's adoptive parents are planning to drive down for the weekend to meet the biological family they thought didn't exist. "How are they handling it?" Luna asks after Ethan hangs up. "Devastated," Ethan responds. "Not because I found my biological family, but because they realize they were deceived too. My mom is especially upset. She always felt guilty about not being able to give me information about my history, not knowing the information she had was lies." "At least now everyone will know the truth," Theo says. "Yes, but the truth hurts sometimes. all these people, our parents, Ethan's parents, us, we lived decades of our lives based on lies other people told to protect themselves. It's a sobering reminder that even happy endings come with complications, that solving mysteries doesn't always bring only joy. 1 year later, Luna is organizing a photography exhibition at a local gallery, a series called Nocturnal Consciousness, Portraits of Insomnia, that captures not just the loneliness of sleepless nights, but also the unexpected connections that can emerge in the depths of dawn. The photographs tell the story without telling the story. Images of empty cities at dawn, two shadows meeting in a bookstore, identical faces illuminated by laptop screens, a family reuniting for the first time in decades. "This is my favorite," says a voice behind her. Luna turns to find Ethan standing in front of a particular photograph, two figures silhouetted against the city skyline, back to back but connected by their shadows that stretch out and touch. "When did you take this?" he asks, studying the composition with an artist's eye. "The night after you two first met," Luna responds. "I couldn't sleep," ironic, considering this whole journey started with insomnia, "so I went out to photograph at dawn. When I developed the photo, I realized I'd captured something about you two without realizing it." Ethan smiles, gently touching the frame. "We're looking in different directions, but still connected." Exactly as it should be. You're separate individuals with your own lives and paths, but you'll always be fundamentally part of each other. Theo joins them, slipping an arm around Luna's waist in a gesture that's become natural and comforting. "How's the exhibition going?" "Better than I expected. Lots of people interested in the stories behind the photos. Some people even asked if the images are staged because the connections seem too cinematic to be real." "Are you going to tell our story?" Ethan asks. Luna considers this. Over the past year, she's had several offers from publishers interested in turning her experience into a book, TV producers intrigued by the dramatic possibilities, even a documentarian who wants to explore similar cases of sibling separation. "Maybe eventually," she says, "but with names changed, details altered. The story belongs to you as much as to me." "I think you should tell it," Theo says. "It's a story worth telling, about how sometimes the most impossible things are real, how love can exist in forms we never expect, how the connections we need can come through paths we never could have imagined. And about how insomnia isn't always a curse," Ethan adds. "Sometimes it's a gift in disguise." As the night progresses and the gallery fills with people admiring Luna's work, she reflects on how her life has changed completely since that first night when she typed "Luna Insomniac" into an online forum. She rarely has insomnia now. Finding Theo brought a kind of peace she didn't know she was looking for. But when she does have sleepless nights, she doesn't fight them anymore. Instead, she sees them as opportunities for reflection, for creativity, for appreciating the rare quietude that most people never experience. "There's something I've never asked you both," Luna says, as they watch people studying her photographs. "Do you still feel that sense, that something's missing, that incompleteness that led you to seek connection in the first place?" Theo and Ethan exchange a look, the kind of wordless communication twins are famous for, but which they had to develop as adults. "Not in the same way," Ethan responds. "I still have insomnia sometimes, but now it's just insomnia, not an existential search for my other half. And I sleep better knowing there aren't fundamental mysteries about my identity I need to solve," Theo adds. "So, what are you looking for now?" Luna asks. "The same thing most people are, I guess," Ethan says. "Purpose, growth, ways to contribute to the world that go beyond just solving our own internal mysteries. For me," Theo says, "it's about building something lasting. Family, relationships, maybe someday our own children, who will never have to wonder about their origins." Luna smiles, thinking about how stories rarely end the way we expect them to. A year ago, she was torn between two people, feeling guilty and confused about divided love. Now, she's in love with one person who loves her completely, while maintaining a deep friendship with another person who found his own form of completeness. "You know what's strangest about this whole experience?" she says as they prepare to leave the gallery at the end of the night. "What?" they both ask simultaneously, then laugh at the unintentional synchronization. "I started looking for a cure for insomnia and ended up finding a family. Not my biological family, but a chosen family built around shared experiences and genuine connections." "Does that include us?" Ethan asks with a smile. "Especially you. You're the brothers I never had, even though our relationship doesn't follow conventional family patterns." As they walk together down the nighttime street, Luna in the middle, Theo and Ethan on either side like symmetrical bards, she thinks about how some stories don't have endings in the traditional sense. Instead, they have transformations, new beginnings, the evolution of people and relationships into forms no one could have predicted. Her story began with sleepless nights and loneliness, but transformed into something much larger, an understanding that human connection comes in many forms, that family can be biological or chosen, or both, that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as problems. When Luna finally gets home that night, she doesn't have insomnia. She sleeps deeply, dreaming of infinite possibilities and happy awakenings. And for the first time in her adult life, she's not afraid of silence or darkness, because now she knows that even in the depths of night, she's not alone. In the end, insomnia hadn't been her curse, but rather the path to her greatest blessing. Not just finding love, but helping other people find the missing pieces of their own lives. And if that's not a happy ending, it's at least a happy beginning for everything that comes next.
Your heart knows the way. Subscribe and follow the beauty.